Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Sabine. Gotta love a vibe like that. What a way to
Yes,
start a live.
it is a great way to start a live. And today we wanted to share a few insights around the commercial sustainability paper that we just released. And we want to explain why we put this together and what we see as trends for 2023 that I guess the world of insurance and corporates, even in adjacent sectors, should consider and look into. First of all, I would like to thank all the amazing sponsors and the amazing companies that wanted to be part of this project, right, Lisa? We had EPAM, we had Suzanne from CTIFS. For sure, we work very closely with our dear friend Matt Ferguson and Matt Conley from Sunner to
Wait,
actually look
which
at
one is
how
the Matt, right, Sabine?
the
The
Matt.
Matt.
Yes, the maths. And the key thing is for us when we do this together is to really understand the balance between the thought leadership and also the research and really understanding the ecosystem. And Matt really was amazing to say, okay, what about looking at those ventures and what about doing this way? But also really love working with Scott Gunther from Farmarks Venture, which is IAG in Australia. Yes, we have the amazing team from Australia, IAG, who supported this initiative, Accord as well, and Kairos, who I discovered through you, Lisa. So thank you for introducing me to Jeff and the team with a French team. So how can I not know that team? But we have been
How
talking
did you
so
not
much.
know them?
I know. And you know why? It's probably because you discovered them because they were in energy and commodity. And now we thought, guys, it would be super for insurance. And they agreed. And now they are going full blast into insurance with the geoanalytic capabilities they have. But I also want to thank the InsurTech Connect team who have been a great supporter of this initiative. They knew how much we wanted to talk about sustainability for the past 18 months, and they have been on the journey with us and trusted us around thinking differently about the problem. Before I come to you, Lisa, I want to also highlight that we had three main buckets, three main themes we actually wanted to dive into with Commercial Sustainability 1.0, which was data, analytics, and ethics, supported by MapTech, GWT Insight, One Concern, and McKinsey Intelligence Services. We went into responsible underwriting. How do we do that better with the right data? Where we had artificial, provisical, live EO, and salient, looking at the problem in very, very different ways. And then we talked about disrupting the insurance model. And what we wanted to see here is how do we move to the next type of business model? And, I loved working with Akinova, Planck, Autonomy, and Parametrics. Here we talked a lot of parametrics and marketplaces and predictive business model, but I think we need to move into probably circular and start thinking about what a circular business model will be, right, Lisa? So tell
Yeah.
me what your thoughts are around all this great work and probably maybe help me define, because I didn't even define what commercial sustainability actually is.
I mean, that's why I love getting to do these inquiries with you, Sabine, because first of all, you're just so amazing at building content and standing behind the hype with real detail research. So right, so I think a lot of people, I'm going to get to the definition of sustainability. And I'm not being rude because marketing wins, right? Hashtags rule. Optimization drives, people's engagement. But at the end of the day, sustainability has to mean something beyond, I think, what people traditionally would hashtag or hype it. And so the beauty of this project specifically was the intersection or the overlay, which is artfully how we define commercial sustainability. And so you teed it up beautifully, just setting it up for me to kind of spike it just perfectly with the circular reference. So if we think of circularity, we think of the first circle as being data, AI, ethics, and analytics. And so I think of that as being a circle. And I think most people would just stay in that circle because there's so much to cover just in that circle. But if you take the second circle and you pull it over, which is responsible underwriting, so we're building concentric circles here that overlap. Data and where we are with data connects to responsible underwriting. And so it starts to form that overlap in the middle, which is how do we do responsible underwriting? How do we do sustainable data practices and create this intersection between? But that's not enough. As we hear many of our insurance carriers, thought leaders, and insurtechs focus on, it's not enough to just have the data. It's not enough to be able to stream the data. It's not enough to be able to do responsible underwriting, algorithmic underwriting in real time. You also have to transform your business model and moving towards more dynamic business models, which we heard in the target, the new business model. And of course, I'll get there in a minute, but what better example to tout than parametric or, in the future, cyber, which is these dynamic based business models. All of those things stand alone aren't enough to really change our industry at a macro level. But the sustainability, and we defined it in this report as being the concentric circle overlap between all three. So it's the middle. The sustainability comes in the intersection. I call it the armor, or the intersection inner point between all three circles moving together. And it's where they overlap in that middle part that we define very appropriately in the report as commercial sustainability. One thing that I hope people take away when they read the report from all of the amazing thought leaders and contributors and sponsors and people who are really willing to see beyond an isolated micro trend, but really start to focus on the macro trends, that slide in the report, to me, is the catalyst of identifying a new category and a new macro theme in insurance, which we can all anchor on, which we, of course, defined as commercial sustainability. So hopefully that helps everybody today understand.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. And you know what? I will see whether I can get and upload the image when actually you go into the next level of explanation. Because yes, we have these 3 cycles, and we know the cycles are going to evolve, right, between the data, the underwriting, and the business model. And actually, it's really understanding how we make those businesses more dynamic. And then sustainability means, reuse, it means repurposing, it means, how do we become more circular? But also we look at the issue which affect the world today. So we wanted to focus on commercial lines. So commercial sustainability, meaning we want to talk about commercial lines insurance, those big mammoth cases, insurers helping the energy sectors, oil and gas, helping their customers, supply chain, helping their customer become more sustainable. And I think there is no choice. Insurers are part of that journey. They can't just let that happen on its own with their customers. They need to educate them. They need to understand the risk, the sustainable risk. And, we talked about it in terms of more macro level, urbanization, supply chain, environmental risk. And there are many more, right? We know the emerging risks are coming up, and we are discovering more and more of those. And then from a sustainability viewpoint, we wanted to make sure that we were talking about things which were concrete. And so because a lot of weight is being put on environmental risk right now, meaning that we are looking at flooding, we are looking at wildfire, we are looking at earthquakes, we are looking at all those climate events, which are often caused by human. If I quote Javi from Previsico, said, Sabine, they are not climate disaster, they are climate events, and then, human-made disaster, which I thought was actually
Yeah.
quite profound. And so how do we reconcile the two? How do we change our behaviors? How do we make sure we educate businesses to do the right things from an operational viewpoint? How do they improve the operation? From a product and service viewpoint, how do we meet the needs of our customers by building and providing the right product and services, which fall for me into all these emerging risks which are entering our world? And then, as suppliers, I love working with the insurance company I work with. And one thing which actually I like is some of them says to me, well, Sabine, you are a female founder now, and you are also, a minority. So at the end of the day, when you look like social innovation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you will be in our numbers too. So
Yeah.
it's also looking at your vendors, your value chain, and how that value chain actually enabling you to be sustainable as well.
And I love that because I think it there's so much there, and even I'll say an extension. I think we think of the environment very much as, you know, climate, which of course is, but we also there's these um like avalanching of things that add up, like grains of sand that add up, right? Which become things like our process and our compute. Like, how much are we doing the same things repetitively? And so one thing that I think, we'll see as we look forward, and you connected that very lovely into these macro trends. One of the things that I think we'll see as we move forward is that it's not just enough to solve problems in our own backyard with our own solutions, with our own startup, with our own, corporate innovation. We have to understand, we have to step back and understand what load are we putting on the environment with the actions that we're taking in trying to solve these problems. So, like, redundant data pricing is a great example of that. If you're buying from 10 to 20 different providers, I'll take geospatial as an example, a geospatial solution, but every one of those providers has gone out and gotten the same open source data, done the same extraction, done the same data manipulation, done the same processing. You, by definition, are contributing to redundant processing, which is not sustainable, right? So I think that where we will see this evolve is even beyond just the tracking of what are we doing to prevent and help the climate and the environment from a literal perspective, like extreme events and weather events, but also what is our footprint? What is our footprint of data processing, of cloud compute? Just like our carbon footprint, Sabine. I think we'll also be talking about these things in 2023 and forward. But you bring up a great thing that I did some research and I wanted to ask you about as we go into 2023, which is, in my mind, we're also pivoting now into this very different macroeconomic environment. And as we pivot into that macroeconomic environment with inflation, with cost focus, I would say that there's kind of three trends, and I wanted to ask you if you're seeing the same trends. So the first one I would think of as a cost of living focus. I've heard some insurers call it a cost of living crisis, which would be the policyholders or the consumers ourselves are facing cost decisioning in a way we haven't before. How do you see this affecting decisions on commercial sustainability? Because of course, as consumers face those things, businesses, that's a trickle down to businesses. So I'd love to hear your lens on that. And then I've got two more that I'd love to also pick your brain on, but I'll ask you that one first.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the cost of living, I mean, here I will be just telling you the numbers. Cost of living is super high now in the UK. I've heard situation where people pay up to £1,000 for their electricity bills per month. So imagine £12,000 just to pay for electricity and gas, particularly if you have a big family. So, it's about controlling your energy now, maybe wearing jumpers at home rather than just putting the heater. So people are becoming much more conscious of that. Food wise, I would say the cost of food has probably doubled. We didn't have tomatoes just a few weeks ago. I know that we're joking with some of my friends in France. There was no mustard, and so it was revolution. No mustard in France. I mean, how can you survive? You know me, right? I don't eat ketchup.
I
I
almost
don't
got
eat.
stuck in Paris on March, whatever it was, March 7th, because there was a strike, but I didn't know it was about the mustard. I'm joking.
It might have been, but
I think it was about the retirement age increasing. I think that's why they were striking, but it may have been about the mustard too.
But in 21st century, we have been so used to consume and abuse, right? You used to
Yeah.
see pictures of vegetable being thrown when you think, in some countries they don't even have enough. And now we are in a crunch time where actually some of the things which are needed to live are so expensive or not available at all. I think that's fascinating to me. A lot of people who used to earn decent living wages are on food stamps now as well, or now putting those meters in their home so that they can control the electricity.
Yeah.
So, and the inflation, right? It's around 11%, I think. It needs to go down. And then, people are saying, we have inflation. So we have a lot of strike as well now in the UK because the cost, your salaries are not aligned to the inflation because no company can afford it, right? You have inflation, but it doesn't mean that we are making more money. So we have to fire people if we are going to pay people more. And so it's a vicious circle. So for me, what that means for the insurance industry we live in, or financial services, first, I try to separate any thinking around consumer versus corporates. And from a consumer side, for sure, there is an opportunity around carbon footprint awareness. There's opportunities around finding ways to educate people as to how they can live better, cheaper. There is opportunity as well to find new ways to support economy, the social innovation things, right? Helping the unbanked, underbanked, the underserved, the protection gap we keep on talking about. But I think it's a common effort, which includes the whole system of country and subsystem connecting to other countries for it to actually succeed. Lisa,
which is interesting, right? Because which I want to not the second one I wanted to ask your lens on is, okay, so we have the natural macroeconomic conditions which are affecting us all, right? So you have the consumer and the person, living their daily life, which is needing to change in ways we've probably not seen in a really long time. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, a lot of our solutions that we're taking forth to the industry are additive. They're subscription. They're, it's $5 here, $10 here. I'll use dollars instead of pounds. Sorry, Sabine. We can convert later.
That's fine.
But the point is, a couple of exchange rates aside, Brexit, wink, wink. A couple of exchange differences aside, people are focused on, we've been in this macro world where these little things mattered, but probably, I don't know, there's actually whole systems that look at how oversubscribed you are and how much money you could save a month if you do these things. And but on the other side, we have solutions and insurtechs coming forward and creating, I'll call it, all these subscriptions, which then would get passed down to the consumer. But if we step up one more notch, and I'm dying to ask you this question, given the fact that you and I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but you and I both worked for a long time in technology. So of course we do insurance, but we both have a very deep technology background, meaning you and I have either worked for or supported, sold to, or been directly in the realm of the CIO and technology. So ultimately technology spend. So the question I have for you is, in this current macroeconomic environment where corporates are also trying to find ways to pull back, to save money, cost cutting, like as a former CXO, rein it in, change the P&L. What are the levers that we pull when we change the P&L? So I'd love from your lens, if you're the CIO or you're the head of enterprise architecture and you are now in the societies in this macroeconomic environment, what pressures do you believe the CIOs are facing? What commitments do you think that they are offering? And then I would love, after hearing that, I have some theories on where they might go to like start to get some of that money. And I'd love your lens on that as well.
So when you look at corporates and the lens from the chief innovation or information or technology officer, it's true. They're actually being very careful around expenditure. But I think like any product life cycle or evolution, you have always the early adopter, the fast followers, and the laggards. And I would say
crossing the chasm still reigns, even like
good
30 years later, it's still relevant, right?
Yeah, it is still a good framework because it's easy to categorize therefore companies and put them in buckets. And I would start with the laggards. I think, and again, another framework, Gartner, hype cycles. What you actually find is Gartner's always break down companies into running the business. I think the second one is evolving and transforming. I have a blank around the second one. Running the business or transforming the business is definitely the one I've always been looking at because they are opposite to me, rather than looking at the middle option. 70% of organizations are still running the business. So they need technology to support them. Some actually started looking at cloud, starting looking at Web3, metaverse, still very early stage in insurance, but they're not doing this to run the business, right? They're actually doing this because they are to be transformative and knowing where the customer is. Laggards tend to be much more focused on running the business. And so in times of crunch, they will actually take cost out of the business and see what are the subscription they can actually take out. Even I, at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, where are we making waste? Where do we have subscription? And, we talked about it, that we don't need, that we need to restructure. And so I talked to some of my vendors and said, look, my usage, I've not used this, so I don't want it. So what is going to be my new price? One of those vendors actually trying to double the price in months on me. And I said, are you sure you want me to go to the embezzlement? Because in Europe, the law, you need to give 3 months notice to people. They freaked out a little bit out, and then they gave me a 20% discount. So I'm just saying this loudly to vendors trying to increase price and trying to
megaphone moment.
A month and say, oh, our price is going to increase next month. It's like, no, it's probably not legal. And just make sure you know what is European laws. And usually there are American companies doing that, by the way.
Well, I think you bring up I talked about this oddly enough on a CIO's Unfiltered podcast with MuleSoft at the beginning of the year. So I wasn't saying, right, as a former CFO and somebody that ran IT for a global reinsurance organization, ran IT cost out, not ran IT, but we call it app consolidation. And, I can't imagine a board meeting right now where a CIO has not committed to a certain amount of cost containment for his or her global organization. Yeah. And the playbook, I used playbook yesterday on my LinkedIn post, so I'll stay with playbook. The playbook that a CIO and a technology controller knows is app consolidation, technology consolidation. And so interestingly, over the past couple of years, we've gotten into what I'll call technology democratization, which is where the business has been, I won't say left alone, but left in I'll call it this nice bubble of buying and experimenting and doing a lot of, technology consumption without a ton of oversight or restriction by the enterprise architects or the CIOs. Now, I know business people are probably like, that's not true, but I would say yes. And so what's going to happen is naturally what I predict will happen is they're going to start inventorying all that, and they're going to go for what I call a typical playbook of consolidation. You know, eliminate redundancy and get to one. So I'll advocate here that that's the wrong answer, because what's going to happen is businesses have been given this flexibility and agility of, you know, to your point, Sabine, there's many things that we may like to use, many different subscriptions where we like the bell on one and the whistle on the other. And we've been able to afford that in our corporate professional lives. What I would say is, instead of eliminating apps, eliminating the redundancy of similar processing, which gets into sustainability across the apps, that you as at an enterprise level could take hold of, but that you, Sabine, still get that bell and that whistle. So I think that's one trend that hopefully CIOs and business, it can keep both sides happy. The CIO can still get their costs out. The business can still keep their bell and their whistle. But again, call out to vendors. That means you're going to have to start rethinking your pricing modules in so much as redundant, i.e. non-sustainable economic processing at an enterprise level commercially, Sabine, will become something you as a vendor are going to have to start compromising on. Meaning you're going to have to start breaking down your pricing and getting rid of those things that, you know, an enterprise could do for itself, self-service. Think of open source data processing or something like that. And that you're really doing your bell and whistle. So which will get to my third question.
Sabine, but before you go into your third question, I also wanted to talk about the early adopters or the fast followers, you know, those companies who actually realize there is a crunch in the economy. However, this is their opportunity to actually double, triple, and grow their businesses. And I'm not going to say names, but, you know, there is a very amazing insurance companies, which is highly profitable in the billions right now, who actually has made, you know, tangible investment in understanding innovation. I'm very proud to have been supporting their commercialization activities, and for others, their R&D activities. But what you see here, okay, no, we need to run the business, but we know that how we differentiate is transform the business. And there are very clear themes, clear strategic themes that are really highly well explained and with very clear bullet points around what sustainability means for us, what transition economy means for us, what commercial sustainability and driving resilience for our customer means. And it's also about changing the business models. And they are changing their business model, looking at new revenue model, which goes into monetization, which to me, when we look at some of the things we want to look at, we talk about dynamic business model and circular business model. We talk about data. And for me, it's like, okay, how do we identify how we make a business more sustainable by looking at accurate and quality data to solve for, let's say, flooding, wildfire, you know, all those environmental things we talked about and we understand, but then moving to the two other components, which is social, and then building the right governance around it. And lastly, so I said circular, dynamic, data quality and accuracy. And the last point I wanted to highlight around those transformation leaders is, you know, building that exchange where they do not have many of the same. They are very strategic around how they are building their hub, their partner hub, to actually solve for one single problem at a time. And that is hard. I know you know exactly that Lego conversation you are championing. And this is hard, Lisa.
This is not only hard, but it's the secret veil. It's what that which gets to my third question, which, so first of all, you know, I love the word dynamic. Yes. Because we have these dynamic capabilities, we can almost consume so much. So we've got the static world, we've got these dynamic capabilities, but what I totally see, and you know, maybe someone will come back to this inquiry like 5 years from now and say, Sabine and Lisa predicted it first. What I totally see is a collision of, we have not been building startup solutions in this sustainable way. We've been building it as point solutions that stand alone. And you know, we've tried with ecosystems, but I think sophisticated insurance companies need, the call to action here is need to layer in sustainability as they start to ingest these solutions in this really I'm going to use one of your favorite words, Sabine, in this digital ecosystem. So what do you think? And I know we've got a few minutes left. So I'll kind of tee this over to you before we talk. And maybe this is a great time. Like, what's next? As we start to think about 2023, as we start to think about, Lisa and Sabine continuing this passion of identifying macro trends that we can connect all of this amazingness in our industry to. What do you think is next, Sabine, in terms of digital ecosystems and beyond?
So, if you don't mind, I would like to echo something you've said earlier because I was able to upload the slide or
Sure.
the reports, and I just want to show a couple of pieces. Right, those are the 3 cycle we started with our thesis when we started this project. Earlier last year, it was probably June, July, we wanted to go into that. And we presented this. We organized a very bespoke private event at ITC Vegas. The pre-day, it was fully booked, oversubscribed, and we had to manage so many people in the room. And by the way, we will continue to do those, right? At InsurTech Connect Barcelona and InsurTech Connect Vegas, we're already planning everything, and we want to identify our partners and people who are going to bring a really unique lens on that opportunity to start solving for commercial sustainability. So calling out, a startup, vendors, insurers want to be part of that discussion. But I think the other point I wanted to share, actually, which I think is a little bit further down here,
Yeah.
is, it's not
Those
small,
are
it's not
not
small numbers.
insignificant numbers.
Yes. Those are not small numbers, right? Even when you look at supply chain disruption, and when I talked to Yann Barbarou from Autonomy, it's been, we are scratching the surface, and some of those numbers are even bigger. But the key thing for me is 11% of companies are monitoring their supply chain. So there's a massive opportunity to reduce those 182 million, right? So
Yeah.
the last point I want to highlight, and I think this was really crucial when we were at InsurTech Insight, when Inge Biel launched the event. One key moment for me was when she said, when I look at startup, when I look at InsurTech and the industry need InsurTech, what I didn't like is that I thought they were just reinventing the customer engagement, or they're just adding call centers to the process to help insurers do their job better. But it was additive. He said, at the end of the day, InsurTech needs to take cost out. It needs to be about efficiency. And so the only way this can succeed long-term is top-line growth. So what is a model to create top-line growth and take cost out? And that is just what I wanted as well to add, Lisa, before going into
which she was really getting at, the beauty of that. And unfortunately, I think, sorry, just a few more minutes over, but just to amplify this, so many startups get fixated on OpEx. Like, we can help you take cost out. And I'm like, no. What she was saying is, we have to do all this in a way that additive together. We haven't created an unsustainable macroeconomic condition of our purchasing. We still have to add revenue, and we have to be doing these things sustainably. And if the listeners can just imagine, if 20 people are doing 40% of the same thing, that's not economically sustainable. That is exactly what she was talking about, because you cannot consume, everyone thinks they get in on their magical POC, the one hit wonder, and they're going to grow and expand this times, exponential number of carriers. And I'm like, no, because they can't. You've got to forecast that as a fundamental economic model here. No one running a company is fiduciarily able to say, I can pay 20x of the same process, whatever that is, 10%, 20%, 40%. That is, ergo, not sustainable. And so I think, Sabine, the beauty of this is the inflection point is here. We have the macroeconomic conditions. We have the consumers saying, I can't bear any more cost. So it has to be reductive, not additive to what I'm buying as a consumer. We have corporates saying, we've been doing all these POCs, but if we start to put an entire solution together, it has to be reductive, not additive. And we have the insurtechs coming together saying, okay, maybe I can learn how to partner and I'll call it decompose my revenue model in a
Mhm.
way that I need my uniqueness to be paid for, not redundant processing to be paid for. So I think if I had to look at 2023 and beyond, I think the intersection of that, which is what we talk about as commercial sustainability within data, within responsible underwriting, within new business models, and I'll kind of go ahead and throw some, supply chain, cyber, climate risk, things like that in there. That's what I see as being part of our opportunity for this next wave of how we frame, identify, and categorize commercial sustainability.
Yeah. And you said data. So I just thought, there's a lot of data out there. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll leave you with that. What do you think our listeners, what would you like to tell them we'll be focused on for the rest of this year?
So commercial sustainability will be absolutely moving to 2.0. And we are shaping the point of view based on the report. So I would urge you either to come into the Alchemy Crew website to download the report or look for our post. Lisa and my post, we actually released as well the report full for you to see directly onto LinkedIn, but you will have to download it because there are links and that will bring you to podcast as well. We are starting to do a little bit more dynamic writing. So we are going to build reports which are visually absolutely appealing and live. So that's what we are working as well with some of the reinsurers and insurers we are working with to actually bring this to light educationally and entertaining as well. Infotainment is the world we are in today. So we'll be doing commercial sustainability in Barcelona in June, end of June, and in ITC Vegas, end of October. For commercial sustainability 2.0, we are looking at dynamic underwriting, dynamic data usage, how we can find accurate data and quality data to the closest point of an asset. We'll say if it is a physical asset, do we need to think about other asset, might be digital asset, which is why I love so much the team at Parametrics, educating us so much around the future of cloud downtown, which is for me going into the digital part of the equation. I would like to look at business models again, but much more narrow. You mentioned, Lisa, dynamic business model. So is it all about dynamic this year? And then circular, that is my thing. I love circular. I've seen amazing circular business model moving from transactional cost to, on demand, pay by the hour. The most renowned business model is probably Rolls-Royce with the engines, pay by the hour or pay by the trip. With the maintenance, how does that happen in insurance?
Which totally supports a dynamic focus, right? Circular and dynamic to me are the yin and yang to one another. As you become dynamic, your revenue model has to become circular. So that, which is, to your point, new business models.
Yeah. And I wonder whether we should talk about capital allocation. Is why I think we need to have reinsurers involved into the next discussion, because from business model data, we need to look at operation, the Lego blocks. What are the true Lego blocks to build together at the minimum cost? And then what is the capital which can be allocated against that? So that is what we are going to aim to build and find the right companies, the right startups to build a village. So we are building as well a little bit of a commercial sustainability village on those two conferences and many others. So we are coming together, Lisa, with a concept where we are enabling companies to be much more focused on what can be real for them and, implementable in months rather than years.
I love it. So welcome to the next frontier of commercial sustainability. And I'm so excited to be part of this journey with you. I think for all the listeners, the ability to not only talk about ideas, but to take ideas and create a macro category that our brains can now, like as a due north, as a compass, that our brains can now understand. We now have this macro category that all these fragments make sense. I think that that's going to be so uplifting for companies, and it also gives purpose and meaning to all of the subterranean movement that's going on, to say it's all connected to this bigger macro theme. So I think it's going to be an exciting year, Sabine.
Absolutely. It will be exciting. And because we are tailoring, what we are doing is not just about having everybody, it's about tailoring for driving answers and make this connection much more valuable. We hope a lot of you are going to be on the journey with us. So on this note, thank you. Until next time.